Hi, my name is Vienna, and I am the founder of Theta Healing. And what we're going to do today is we're going to discuss a particular technique that we use in Theta Healing that actually really seems to help people grow and change both mentally, physically, and spiritually. This is called the digging work. It's not a profound name. We're looking and digging for the bottom subconscious belief that holds people to limiting their life and their potential. So what we have found is that beliefs can be changed, pulled. So if you believe you're no good, you can actually go into a theta brainwave and pull that belief and replace it with I am good. But that doesn't actually change the whole scenario of your subconscious. What we do in Theta Healing is we dig for when this first came about, when the belief came about, what started the belief. And once we change those beliefs, the person actually makes a change in their physical, mental, and spiritual bodies. Belief work can be used on many levels. It's been used to actually help people with their businesses, help them find love, help them with physical problems. And some of the belief work started a long time ago. I think the very beginnings was when a little boy came to me that had colon cancer, and I thought he was gone. I thought he was dead, and I actually thought that he was going to go to God. And so what we did is I looked at him. I didn't think he would heal. At the time we were just going up and asking God to do healings. So I asked if I could clear his hatred for his father, because that was the strongest thing that I saw in his body when I went in and looked at him. I had no idea that it would change the course of his life or change the cancer that was in his body. But we pulled the hatred that he had for his father, and all of his cancer went away. And since then, belief work started. We actually started looking and pulling beliefs and seeing physical changes in the body. Now we believe that digging work applied in the correct way can actually change people's lives and actually give them a really good opportunity for their body to heal. So the very first way we actually do digging work is we do review it very quickly in class. Is you start with somebody who's sick and you say, why do you think you're sick? Why do you think this is? And we start doing kind of an investigation work in which we call digging. Now, most of our students actually know how to do this very basic work. But today I'm going to review 9 different ways to do it so that you're more clear on what you're doing and so that you can actually obtain the changes you want. So the very first way we actually talk about digging is something called fear work. Now the world is motivated by 2 different things. It's motivated by fear and love. And hopefully love is the first motivation, but maybe it's not. But fear definitely can block just about anything when it comes to love. Now, these 2 major emotions can actually help you or stop you. And in a lot of ways, people's very big phobias, fear of water, fear of heights, can actually be changed in one session of digging work. So to actually change a fear, you actually ask the person what they're afraid of. Now, a lot of times when we do digging work, a lot of the different methods that I'm going to show you all intertwine with each other. So we're going to show you, just take a moment and show you what we're doing, and then we're going to actually show you an example of digging work. So the first thing is fear. So when you start to work on fear, you actually say, what am I afraid of? They say, I'm afraid of water. And the first thing that happens when you say, I'm afraid of water, is the practitioner looks at them and says, what's going to happen if you're afraid of water? And the person says, well, I'm going to drown. And then you take the fear to the lengths that it needs to, so that the subconscious can realize that it's not really water they're afraid of, that it's just showing itself as that fear. So the first thing that they say is, I'm afraid I'll drown. And you say, what if you drowned? Then what happens? Then they say, well, if I drowned, then I will die. Well, then what will happen? Well, if I die, I will leave my children, and if I leave my children, I'll be a failure, and if I'm a failure, I fail God, and if I fail God, it's wrong for me to go to the light, so I'll be stuck in darkness. Right there, they've already done their own digging work. You just have listened to what they say. The key with digging work is these key words: who, what, when, where, and how. And that's how you proceed with any of the digging work, is using these sentences to someone. Well, you keep saying what will happen if you're stuck in the darkness, and the person says, I'm stuck in the darkness forever, I'll be in the nothing. So then what you realize is that the person isn't really afraid of water at all, but they're actually afraid of the nothing. So you actually go up using the technique that we have in Theta and ask the Creator to pull the fear of the nothing and replace it with whatever the Creator tells you, which is often nothing is still something. You're always loved by the Creator. You're always needed in this energy of creation. And once you pull this fear of the nothing, all the other fears fall apart. Now really, the way to find a bottom belief is when someone repeats something over and over again, like, I'm a failure to God, I'm a failure to my children. These are major beliefs. And once you pull the bottom belief, the fear is gone. Once the fear is gone, the person has no longer a phobia of water. So that's the very first way that we show you how to do belief work, is the fear work. The second way we teach you how to do belief work is resentment. Now resentment is a very interesting thing because resentment is kept in the body for a reason. People just don't resent somebody to resent them. They resent someone to protect them. As long as there's resentment, there's a grudge, they can keep a distance from whoever they resent. And resentment has a really hard energy on the body. It actually affects the kidneys, the adrenals, the whole body's affected. So what you do is you start with people's resentments. Now, you know, I once taught a class in Australia where a woman went home and pulled all her resentments. I resent my father, I resent my mother. And she just pulled them like that. She pulled, I resent my mother, replaced it with forgiveness. I resent my father, replaced it with forgiveness. And when she came back, the next day, she'd lost 2 pant sizes. And I told this story to a class in Utah. Lady went home, sat in the bathtub for 2 hours, pulled all her resentments, and she came back. And she went from a size 13 to a size 10. And that was pretty significant. So I went home and I pulled all my resentments, and actually I didn't lose any weight. However, I did realize that just because you pull that in that sequence doesn't mean it's gone. What you have to do with resentment is you have to take it a step farther. So for instance, I resent my father. This is an example. This is not my real father, not mine. But say someone resents their father. Why do you resent your father? Well, I resent my father because he beat me. Okay, well, he beat you, and he told me I was no good, and he told me I would never succeed. Okay, so those are pretty good reasons to resent someone. Now, you've found some reasons why they resent them. You can pull that. You can pull, I have to be beaten to learn. You can pull, I am nothing, I'm no good, I can never accomplish anything, and replace it with I can. But that will only change the resentment part way. What you have to do at that spot where you've actually found out why the person resents someone, you actually take them a step farther and say, and how did this serve you? How did this help you? And at this point, the person actually says, well, I learned I could do everything myself. I didn't have to depend on anyone. I learned that I never want to be like my father. I never will treat my children that way. I will never beat anyone like my father. Now, as long as that person is learning something, the subconscious will keep that belief. This is a huge thing about belief work. People just don't keep a negative belief to keep it. Every belief that we have serves us in some way. So if your brain is using it to serve it, it will somewhat create it again, even after you change part of it, unless you find out the reason is serving you. So you realize that this woman will never hit her children because her father hit her. So what you do is you teach her what it feels like to know that she can always treat her children good without ever having to be beat or reminded of being beaten, that she can do it on her own. And then you can also pull the belief that she can do everything herself by herself. You can say, yes, you can, but you don't have to be told you can't do it in order to do it. So we remove the inspiration of the resentment so that the person can actually move forward. So those beliefs have now been changed to, I can do things independently all by myself, but I also know how that I can depend maybe on someone else from time to time. All of those can be added. Remember, we have something in the digging work which is called feeling work, where we can actually go up and teach someone what something means. So those are the two first ways, fear and resentment. Now, when people are really sick, you start clearing the resentment, you're going to see some really big, huge improvements. Because once the kidneys are cleared up, the body will actually really have more energy to actually heal itself. So fear work and resentment work are the first two things you learn in Theta Healing. But the next way that you learn is how to work with illness. Now, illness is a little bit different because the body doesn't keep a subconscious program for nothing. There's a reason. The illness is serving a person in some way. Now, in the past, you can ask somebody, why are you sick? Why do you think you've got this? People will sometimes do their digging work right there. Now, I had a woman come in that actually had cancer. She had cervical cancer pretty bad. And I asked her why she had it, and she said, this is my punishment for cheating on my husband. I cheated on him all the time, and this is what is my punishment. And obviously, that would definitely block you from healing. But when it comes to illness, it's usually a little bit more involved, and it usually actually has a really good outcome for some reason when people are sick. They have it for good reasons. So we actually go over two different ways to work on illness. And so we're going to just kind of talk about that really fast. First of all, if somebody is sick, you need to go back to when they first got sick. So say somebody has breast cancer. By the time they find breast cancer about this big around, they've probably had it for 5 years. So you go back to 5 years ago, what was going on in your life. Now, 5 years is a general rule, but actually always going up to the Creator and asking the Creator when it first started is always a good idea. And sometimes people can't remember 5 years right away. So sometimes I actually send them home and say, come back when you figured out what emotions are going on. This is what we did with one lady that was in London. We actually sent her home. She had cancer everywhere. We sent her home and asked what was going into her life when this actually started. And when I seen her, she came back saying, this was the worst year of my life. I broke up with my husband. We had a hard time with his mother. It caused us a huge argument. It destroyed my marriage. It destroyed my life. It was the hardest year of my life. And as we started working on her, well, what did you learn from this? She said, well, I've learned a lot from having cancer. I've learned this, you know, how to take better care of myself, how to act like I'm really important. But as we worked with her, we found that she had lots of blocks towards her husband's love for his mother, and we started changing those. So when you do belief work on illness, you start with what was going on when the illness started. So you say, what was going on in your life when it started? And they say, I was having a problem in my relationship. It wasn't doing any good. I got a divorce. My life fell apart. And then we start looking into their life. Well, why did you get a divorce? I got a divorce because we didn't love each other. We were having fights. We were having arguments. And I hated him. Well, do you still hate him? Well, no, I didn't hate him. And so this way you can actually start to dig, well, what happened next, what happened next. Finding bottom beliefs of them repeating things over and over and over again are bottom beliefs. We broke up because I'm not good enough. I was never good enough. I can never be good enough. And as you pull that belief, I'm not good enough, you start to shift the sickness. Now that is a key on working on sickness, is starting when the sickness first began. And doing belief work, what happened next, waiting for the person to repeat themselves over and over again, or to cry or be disrupted by emotion, then you know you're getting to the bottom beliefs. But one of the best ways to actually work on illness is to kind of flip it around to more of a manifesting technique, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that is, what's going to happen when you get better? And this is a quick way to shorten your digging work. Now, what happens if you get better tomorrow? What's going to happen if you're completely well and everything's better? And this is the best way that you can actually have of finding quickly why they have the sickness. I asked a woman what would happen if she got better, completely better, and the woman actually told me she'd had fibromyalgia for 8 years. She'd been in bed. We'd done enough belief work digging for bottom beliefs that she was out of bed, but she wasn't leaving her house. And as we asked God if there was any more negative beliefs, I got no. Ask for a positive one. So I asked her what would happen if she actually got better. And you know what she said? She said, I'd have to go back to church. Now, apparently she was in a church where they were given assignments, and her assignments was something called a Relief Society president, which is something indicative of the LDS church. They actually give people assignments and ask them to do this. And her assignment was to take care of all the women in the ward and all the sick people in the ward. She already had 5 kids. She felt completely overwhelmed, and she actually was terrified of getting well and having to do it again. So what we did is we actually just went up and did feeling work on her and taught her what it felt like to say no, and that she could say no when there was something she couldn't physically do. And immediately right after we did that work, she was out in the world, back outside. She actually came and took a course from me. She actually hosted me for a seminar. She was more afraid of being well than she was being sick because of what would happen. One of the really good examples is someone that came to our class, and we asked him what would happen if he got well. And he'd been fighting diabetes for a very long time, and his first fear was, if I get well, I'll leave my wife. Now, hours of belief work had been done on this person, but nobody had ever done it this way. If you get well, why would you leave your wife? I'll have to leave her because I'll be well, I'll want to do physical things, I'll want to go hiking, I want to go play, and she hates to do that stuff with me. In fact, she will never leave where we live. We live in the city. She will never leave the city. All she does is take care of me and my diabetes. If I'm well, we have nothing between us. Now, on that particular case, that's immediately when the person got up and walked away. I asked him if he'd like to change those beliefs. He said no. Now, people cannot change their beliefs unless they want to. And that's one of the rules about doing belief work, is that they have to want to. But you can see how quickly you can find why the illness is serving someone. Now, I worked on a woman one time that had breast cancer. It would get in her brain, it would get in her lungs, it would get in her bones, it would get all the way through her body very quickly. The pattern breast cancer usually takes is the breast, the lymph system, the bone, the lungs, and the other breast. And she'd become violently ill. She would heal completely of the cancer everywhere but the breast, and then she'd go through the whole scenario again. And one day I asked her, I said, why do you think you're sick? I mean, how is this helping you? And she was very clear in her answer. It was almost spooky. It seemed that her husband had had an affair on her like 10 years before with her very best friend. And what she said was, I don't want to get rid of the cancer. I just want to get it controllable. I don't want it to go away. I want him to have to take care of me for the rest of his life because it serves him right for what he did to me. And I'm telling you, I will make his life miserable for the rest of his life. Now, that was her motivation. I asked if she wanted to change it. You know what she said? No. She refused to let me change it. Her husband actually called me. I'd actually worked on this woman off and on for like 6 years. Right when she was at the point of dying, she would come back. Right when she was at the point of dying, she'd come back. And finally, she did pass away. Her husband called and informed me. And in a weird way, I was kind of thinking now he will actually have a life because she'd spent the last 10 years torturing him over a mistake. But illness serves a purpose. A lot of healers have really great reasons for illness. It pulls the family back together. It makes things come back together perfectly. The lady in London actually said that the illness had brought her ex-husband back to her, and that they could start a relationship again, and that she was very grateful to the illness. And all we had to do was make sure that she felt like she could be well and still keep the husband. Now, once we did that with the lady in London, the one I just talked about a few minutes ago, she was completely better, by the way. She has actually got a testimonial out that is pretty phenomenal. But the key is that if the body knows it's serving it, it will keep the illness. And we're very complicated beings of light. We're from the Creator. So there's a reason for sickness. You know, the sickness comes to us for certain reasons. Bacteria comes to us a lot of times because of guilt. I believe viruses come to us because of worthiness issues. And I believe that fungus is caused by actual resentment issues. And the parasites come because we feel like being sucked dry all the time. These are all the feelings and emotions that go along with these sicknesses. But in the end, ultimately, we have a reason we're keeping it. It's serving us in some way. Maybe it's the only way you can rest. Maybe it's the only way for you to actually just have time for yourself. But whatever the reason is, you can locate it very quickly by doing this very quick digging work that says, what will happen when you're well? What's going to happen? How's your life changed? How has this sickness helped you? In what way did it change your life? And that way, you can find the true motivation behind the sickness very quickly and very easily. So remember, 2 ways to do illness. When did it begin? What was going on in your life? And start digging for an answer that way. Or 2, what's going to happen if you get better? And what have you learned from it? And whatever you do, any kind of belief work at all, the key, after you find the bottom belief, is saying, how did this help you? How did this serve you? Once you see how it served you, you can actually change the motivation and you can go forward. Now, the next way we're going to talk about very quickly is manifesting. Now, manifesting is something interesting. You want to find the beliefs that are blocking you in manifesting. You most certainly start with actually manifesting. So you have your person close their eyes and actually imagine if they had all the money they ever wanted, what would they do with it? Okay, so you start the person off by saying, if you could have anything and money was not a problem, what would you create? Now, one of my favorite examples is the one that actually we did a few years ago when a man was in class. I said, if you had all the money you wanted, what would you create? Now, instead of digging down, you actually are starting to kind of move up. You're adding things. So what you do is he says to me, I would have a house. I would have 2 houses. Now, when you manifest, you have to really visualize what you want. You can't just, oh, I just want a house. You have to think about it. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Now, giving your subconscious that key can help your manifestation right then. So what does it look like? So I say to him, you have 2 houses, who takes care of it? He goes, okay, never mind, I only want 1 house. I said, okay. So where is this house? It's on the beach. I said, okay. And he says, I have white carpet and white furniture. Now, of course, to my little OCD brain, I'm thinking that's terrible to clean, but it's his fantasy. So I thought maybe we should give him a maid. So I said, who cleans it for you? He said, I guess I need a maid. So I made him visualize his house. He was pretty happy with that. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, well, I travel around the world and I teach healing. Okay, that's good. I said, is there a partner there with you? Someone to hold you, be by you? He goes, oh yes, I have a soulmate. I said, well, visualize your soulmate. Reach out. Imagine holding their hand. And at this point, this is where the block for his manifestation comes in. He starts to cry, and he says, there's no one there. I said, what do you mean there's no one there? He goes, there's no one there. And I said, why isn't there someone there? And he goes, because every woman I love leaves me. Every woman who loves me and I love leaves me. And I say, why do they leave you? He says, because I'm never good enough. I said, why aren't you good enough? And this is where we start doing the digging work. Because I've never been good enough. I'm never what they want. When did this start? Well, it started with my mother. I was never what she wanted. When I was little, I'd make her things and bring her things and make her drawings and things and bring them to her, and she'd look at them and throw them in the garbage. I could never please her. Now, we first noticed that this is what we call bottom belief. He starts to kind of weeping, he wiggles, he cries, he repeats it over and over again, that he can't please his mother. So we know that's the problem. But then we take it one step farther. What did you learn from this? It's very clear. Love hurts. It's safer to be alone than to let somebody in to love me. There's the bottom belief. That is the key. So we realize that what he's doing with these people in his life is pushing them away as they get close. So we start to change some programs. We ask if we can teach him what it feels like, what real love feels like, and that he's safe to be with a partner and have the discernment to find a good partner, and that we can change his belief that it's safer to be alone by teaching him that it's safe to have a partner. So we use another thing called feeling work. Now, a lot of these students know that digging work always goes with feeling work. You go up to the Creator, you teach him these new things, and then you go back and you check him. Now, in Theta Healing, we use muscle testing. It's a primitive way, and it only works if the person's hydrated, and of course it only works on what they believe to be true. But as you practice belief work, you'll know that things change. And as you shift the beliefs, their physical body actually changes. And one of the examples we're going to give you a little bit later today, we're going to actually show you that physically sickness will shift if you hit the right belief work. And as we pull this belief on him, his energy shifts. Now, was all these women in his life that were trying to change him, they were doing it because of his program of I'm never good enough. So everyone kept trying to fix him. But as we shifted his program, teaching him that he was good enough and that he could find someone without being alone that was safe to be with, these things shifted. Now that's manifesting digging. 6 is doing work with the genes. And one of the things we teach in class is that we have a lot of programs. And when we do belief work, we are changing beliefs on all 4 levels. We're changing it on a core belief level, which is something that came through childhood, through reinsertion of beliefs. Everything from this lifetime that we take as a belief that we've created to protect ourselves. We also have beliefs that are from our genetics. And we also have beliefs that are from what we call the history level. So if there were past lives, they're past life memories. But most likely there'll be memories of actual group consciousness. Like if the world believes it, the town believes it, then you naturally believe it. So a history belief would be like diabetes is incurable. That would be a history belief. Now, past life memories doesn't mean that you've actually lived a past life. It means that anything that you touch leaves an essence to it, and anything that's been touched by others have leave an essence to it. So you could be picking up a past life belief by just going up to Yellowstone and walking the land of the Native Americans. You could see their life, you could see flashes. So past life memories are complicated, but they're real. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we've lived these past lives, just that we are in tune, beings of the Creator, that we can pick up all these different things. Whatever the meaning is, it's definitely real. So a past life belief might be a vow of poverty or an oath of poverty, may be found in this history level of beliefs. Now, one of the things that we work with in Theta Healing on a digging purpose is the gene beliefs, the genetic beliefs. So when we created our manifesting class, we actually had people muscle test for beliefs that they never knew were there, that they've actually inherited from their ancestors. So there's prejudice that has been inherited from our gene beliefs. And so sometimes your person who you're working with doesn't really want to work on anything because he doesn't think he has anything. And this is where we pull out another way of working on beliefs called the genetic beliefs. So we had a student that was very arrogant and very hard-headed, and when we did belief work, he never had anything wrong with him, of course. So one day I said to him, if you could work on your father, what beliefs would you work on for him? And he'd go, well, my father thinks he knows everything and he doesn't need anything and he's perfect. And he treats everybody like they're less than perfect, and he's very, very arrogant. I would like to change that about my father. Well, I said, okay, let's do that. Now in belief work, we already go up and command it changed on all 4 levels, but working with the genes is a different belief. So if you find a belief that you don't have any idea where it came from, you can actually ask, what did my parents believe? Did my parents believe this? And as you start to answer these questions, you have to kind of feel your own body. You have to say, you can feel the belief inside of you, and you can say, oh, this is where it comes from. And then you can change the belief. And when Guy and I first met each other, I went into a Native American sweat lodge with Guy. The Native American sweat lodge is a very spiritual experience, but it's 4 hours in a very hot, confined area, which no one actually told me about. And I remember them singing a song and being so angry, just so angry. I couldn't believe how mad this song made me. Yet when they sung a different song, I knew the words and I was totally confident. Again, So what I realized when I stepped out of the lodge, when I asked what this was, I got that this was genetic memory. So I started doing some investigation. So I asked where the song that made me angry came from, and it happened to be a Crow song. Now, I'm part Native American, but I'm part Sioux. And the Crow and the Sioux have hated each other for generations. I heard the language of the Crow and became immediately furious. This is not my belief. This is something that is inherited by the DNA and immediately needed to be changed. So when we do different gene work, our genetic work, we do this because of world relations class, going up and finding out why you're prejudiced against certain people, seeing if you are, changing those beliefs, seeing if you fear certain people. All of this can be changed on a genetic level. So remember, you can go up and you can say, is this my belief, or is this my father's, my mother's, or my ancestors' belief? And if it is, you can actually go up and shift beliefs. And the gene work is used in certain circumstances, especially in world relations classes. But again, if you find yourself with a belief about money, a belief about being too successful, it might not just be from you, it could be from your ancestors. Now, finding it in yourself and changing it on 4 levels is beneficial. But finding out you have a belief that you didn't know was there, you have to do some inner self-talking and see which side of the family it came from, your father, your mother, how were they treated, what did they feel, and you can change beliefs that way. We already just talked about the history beliefs. You can actually work from the history level, so you can actually say, why do people believe this? Now, what happens in the history belief level is that you could be doing belief work on somebody and they'll flip back into a past life memory. It doesn't mean it's their memory. It could be an ancestor's memory. It could be on the land that they've been on. But sometimes the person starts talking like, I was killed for this. I'll be killed for being a healer. And when people start doing that, you can actually do belief work on that. You can actually say, well, why did they do this? Because I hurt somebody. I didn't mean to. I gave them the wrong herb. Okay, so would you like to get rid of the fear of making a mistake and and hurting someone, that you can actually go up and talk to the Creator and that you can be finished with this? And this is how you do what we call history belief work. Now, what people often do on history belief work is they just go up and change it. We actually tell you not to do that. If you have a belief that in another time or place you took an oath of poverty, we actually teach you to go up and pull that and say, this is completed now, this is finished, and move forward. Now, one thing that people try to do with belief work is they try to go up and change every oath and vow they ever made. Well, that's ridiculous, because you've made oaths and vows of marriage in this life. What you want to do is just check to see if you made oaths and vows of poverty and you no longer wish to keep them. You just simply go up and say, this is over, this is done. How the history level affects people in class is I often have students that believe that they traded their gifts of intuitive sight or intuitive healing away in order to help someone. And I actually have a muscle test for that. Then I go up into theta, ask the Creator to change the fact that that's the belief. So I actually say, Creator, teach this person that that belief is over, it's done, it's served them, and it's time to regain your beliefs and your feelings and your abilities back. And that's how we work on the history level. In DNA 3, we've taken healing to a different level. The first parts of DNA 2 is how to work on yourself, how to get your body better, stronger, healthier, how to get your work healthier, how to get your world in a better place. And it's very much about the individual. And it's very much about teaching the individual that they're part of God and they're part of the Creator. And it's very much about discarding beliefs that are no longer serving you and reinserting beliefs that gives you a feeling of connection and strength. But in DNA 3, we've taken it a step further. No longer are we just working on the individual, but we're working on the planet. And we're working on the planet as itself. We're working on massive group consciousness and massive beliefs of the planet. So in DNA 3, we teach you how to do things that are impossible. At least that's what your brain thinks. Now, a belief is usually kept on 2 levels for it to be really inserted into you. It can be on a core belief, a genetic belief, but those are really strong beliefs that can be shifted and changed. But the impossible level is kept in all 4 levels, which means it's impossible to move that bench with just my mind and not my hands. What people don't realize is that the ability to move your body is a miracle in itself. That there are millions of transmitters and neurotransmitters going off that gives you the ability to talk, see, hear, and move things with your body. That alone is a miracle. But to move things without touching it, your brain tells you is impossible. Or to have things move on their own, your brain tells you that's impossible. In fact, your brain may be actually keeping things where they should be. The bench is the bench, and it has to stand still. And what we do in DNA 3 is we actually teach you that you can make changes by doing what we would normally consider the impossible. So we actually show you that you can change the molecular structure of water. We're doing this because we know that in time we will have to. Just as in time we may have to use the techniques we taught in the first class of how to pull radiation out of the body. Everything we teach in Theta Healing is taught for a reason. But when you start to teach your brain not a belief that's there that's negative or wrong in your life, you're not pulling a belief, you're inserting new beliefs. Like the belief that you can shift the weather, or the belief that you can make a difference, or the belief that you can change the pollution on the planet, or that we will find the answers, or we can do impossible feats. Now, anything that the brain thinks is impossible needs belief work done on it. It needs to find out why you believe it's impossible, who told you it was impossible, but mostly that it is still possible. So you're doing a lot of insertion, and you're going to find out your true and utmost fears as you try to do things that you think is impossible. Now, it's an interesting class, DNA 3, because when I was in Italy, all the people in the class could do every exercise but one, and they just totally freaked. And that was because it was a belief that you could move things with your mind. Changing water was fine, moving the weather was fine, but we were telling them to do something that they thought would be impossible. And as a group consciousness, they were very, very uncooperative. And I had to take each person individually and let them see it could be done, even a little bit, even remotely, even if you can do it even a tiny bit. It shifts your brain into a new state of being. So the last way is teaching your brain that what is impossible can be possible. Now, lots of people talk about things. They talk about being able to move from one place to another. They talk about being able to do all these wonderful feats that they can do psychically. But when it comes right down to it, their subconscious will hold them to what they believe is possible and impossible. So digging for the bottom beliefs in this area is more like inserting the possibility first and then clearing the fear later. So, is it possible? Can I do it? Why is it impossible? Why is it impossible for humans to do it? That will shift you to realize that you're not really all in this human body, that you're a being that is connected to all that is, and that you're very, very, very powerful. But you're also connected to an energy of creation, so that you have to kind of do your part. So that would be the 9th way. So that would be the way that we use in DNA 3. Some people love the class. Some people can't even understand the class because they haven't done enough belief work on themselves to even be in the class. Now, I just covered 9 different ways of belief work. Some for illness, some for manifesting, some for fear, some for resentment, some that's genetic and some that's history, but some that is also just fears of doing things that are impossible. So that should actually help you in your way of doing digging work. Digging work is who, what, when, where, how. And sometimes we do repeat their answer to them. And you will notice that in the digging work, we may suggest something to the person, but their subconscious is this amazing computer. And it will actually clear out anything that you try to send to it that isn't real. It will correct you. But let me tell you, if your subconscious doesn't think you've earned it, you probably haven't. So you will have to earn it. So you may have to clear more beliefs. You're going to be surprised. A lot of you that have done the digging work have already used every one of these digging beliefs works. But some of them maybe you didn't realize you could use. And if you can actually see that you have all of these tools available to you, it can actually help you a lot with your belief work.